G'day. In this set of videos, we are looking at a layout feature that's particular to Figma that allows us to make our designs a bit more responsive and adaptive. And that feature is called Auto Layout. And it allows us to do stuff like what I've implemented here. I've got a mobile and a desktop design. But there's a certain amount of kind of adaptability and flexibility that is built in to each of these designs through the use of auto layout. You can see that our headers and footers kind of flex, and that content in the middle is also adapting depending on the width and depth of our screen size. So we can do that with auto layout. Let's have a look at how we achieve those kinds of components, responsive components. We'll start by making a simple button, and I'm going to do that by just creating some text, and we'll write button. I think I'll style it in my regular style. And I'm going to apply an auto layout to this element. So that's going to create a parent frame around that element with auto layout applied to it. Now we can apply auto layout a couple of different ways. There's a right click option and add auto layout, or there is the keyboard shortcut, which is Shift A. And you can see that it has wrapped a frame around the outside of that content. And we've got the content nested inside there, so it's like a parent-child relationship that we've got going on here. I can click in and select the child, and then the frame is the parent there. When I have created an auto layout, you can see that I've got some auto layout properties over here that I can adjust. And let's have a look at some of those. At the moment, we don't have more than one child inside our auto layout, so we can't adjust the space between, but we can adjust the margins here, make it bigger and smaller. It might be easier for us to see what's going on here if I give the frame a background. And we're making a button here, so may as well make it look a bit more button-esque by rounding off the corners of that frame. So just increasing the margin. I could increase the top and bottom margin if I want, and I can also adjust those values independently. Top, bottom, left, right. I can have more than one item inside an auto layout. So if I hit Command D, it's going to duplicate that child, and now I've got two children inside, and this one could say so we've got two different elements there, and we can rearrange elements inside of an auto layout. So if I hit the arrow keys on the keyboard, I'm just hitting the right arrow, it's going to swap those two things around, and I can drag and drop them, the arrangement as well. So I'll just duplicate. I've got a third one in there. I can adjust the direction of our auto layout, so I can have our layout going horizontally, or I can have it going vertically, so I can stack items on top of each other. We can also wrap our items, and we might get to that later. I can also put other objects in there, like I could grab a component from my asset library here. For example, I'm going to grab this icon, and I'm going to drop it right in the middle there. And if I want to move it around, I can use the arrow keys on the keyboard to move it, reposition it. If I wanted to remove something from that auto layout, like a child from it, I can just delete it. And you see how the frame that's wrapping all this content is actually adjusting its width depending on the content that's in there. And it's doing that because the hug property is applied to the horizontal resizing. So the frame is going to hug the content, and if the content becomes more like the parent frame is going to hug around that content. So it's really quite useful for that idea of responsive design. We also have some alignment options here. So this allows us to align our items inside the parent frame. So if I want everything to align to the bottom, I could, or the center, I could do that as well. That might be more obvious if I've got a deeper button there. I'm just going to undo all of that. And we might finish off our button here by deleting this extra element here, just having one text element and then the graphic, and maybe this is going to be like a settings button. Great. And we'll turn it into a component. And file it off in our components page. I'm just going to move that over to the components page so that I can grab it later, but I've got my screen design space over here. You can see over in the components page, I've got all of my components. Go back to here and continue on. So we made a button, and I also want to make a couple of other things in this video, in the first video. I want to make a header and a footer. I might start with the footer first because that will allow us to explore some different aspects of auto layout. I've got a series of social media icons, and I'm just going to drag them out onto my screen design workspace. They're kind of randomly positioned there, sort of horizontally. I'm going to hit Shift and A on the keyboard to make an auto layout. You can see when I've got multiple objects selected, I do actually have the option to click this plus button and add an auto layout. I might just do that right now. And you can see that that has sucked those child elements into a parent frame, and it's spaced the elements out evenly, which is great. And now I can manipulate how they are positioned and relate to each other. I can adjust the space between them. I can also adjust the margin top and bottom, left and right. I might give that frame a color. Our foot is going to be this grey kind of color. And also visually on the frame there, you can see that there are some handles where I can adjust some of those parameters as well. So I can change the space between items like so. Okay, so currently our frame is set to hug vertically and horizontally. I might switch that over to fixed width. So fixed width allows me to give a particular width to my frame. And I might change the width to 390. That's the size of an iPhone 14. And that'll allow us to look at how we can space these elements out, child elements out within the parent. I can center those elements, which is good. I can center them in the middle of the frame if it's a bit deeper. So now I've fixed the height as well. If I just clicked and dragged, I might give that proper height, so it's 100. I could bottom left, bottom right, and I can move those elements around the page. The other thing that I can do is I can add an auto spacing between each element. That's down here, and that's going to put that's going to shift everything equally across the containing frame. So if I wanted to pin things left and right and to the center, I can also do that by double clicking here, and that's going to add that auto option. Now I can also add margins and margins to that if I wanted to space it. And now you can see that this frame is like pretty responsive. So if I move it around, it's going to adapt and change depending on the height width that I give it. So that's really good. I'm going to create a component out of this. This is going to be called footer. And we'll go on to make a header as well. We'll move that over to the components page. So let's make a header. I've got a menu icon and I've got a search icon. Let's pop them together. And I'm going to create Shift A to create a frame out of those, an auto layout frame. So it's going to be on the, this element's going to be on the right hand side of my, my header. So this is a good kind of setup, because if I wanted extra icons in that nav, I just hit Command D there and I duplicated a version of that, but I could replace that with another icon if I wanted later on, or indeed if I wanted to delete one of those, I can do that. In my header, I'm going to have a logo, and I'm going to wrap all of these, both of these items, into an auto layout frame. So over here I can hit auto layout, could have gone Shift A as well. My header is going to have a background, so I'm going to fill it with this color, and I might add to that 20 pixel margin, top and bottom, left and right. So that's looking good. Inside here, I forgot to do this before, but I want to add some space in between these two icons, and that 20 pixel increment seems pretty good to me. You can see how it just added a little bit of space there, so everything's flexible because it's hugging, because it's set to hug. The parent frame will adapt depending on kind of what you got happening in here, which is great, nice and responsive. I am going to change it from hug though to fixed width, because I want it to be able to, I want the left and right to adapt. So what I'm going to do is change it to a fixed width of 390, which is the width of an iPhone 14. And I'm also going to set this to auto, so it will space it out perfectly depending on how much space I've got in there. And then if I do need to change this at some other stage, so for example, if I was making another version of this for an iPhone 15, I could change the width of this to 430, and it will automatically adapt and change for me. All right, I'm going to turn that into a component, and then that will lead us into putting some of these things together into a layout. We've also got an image tile that I want to make as well. I'm going to call this header. Move that over to my components page, and we'll meet back here shortly.